Captain Elias Ward stood straight in the great hall of the Interstellar Council. The ceiling stretched so high it seemed to touch the stars themselves. Lights glowed softly, not from lamps, but from living crystals hanging in the air. Beings of V. Many shapes and colors filled the chamber. Some floated, some walked, some shimmered like clouds, yet all turned their attention toward the tall human soldier in the center. Elias wore his uniform, though it was scratched and marked from his years of service. He was not a man who cared for ceremony. He preferred the hum of his ship, the smell of metal corridors, and the endless sight of space outside the viewports. But today, he was not a soldier on patrol. Today, he was being honored. A voice, clear and melodic, filled the hall. It belonged to High Chancellor Serial, a tall figure of silver skin and calm eyes. "Captain Elias Ward," the Chancellor said, "human of Earth, you have served not only your own people but many worlds. You have led missions to protect colonies, rescue stranded ships, and guide trade through dangerous zones. For these acts, the Council wishes to give you thanks." Elias bowed slightly. He never liked long speeches. "I only did my duty," he said. His voice was steady, but inside, he felt uneasy with so many eyes on him. The Chancellor smiled gently. "Duty, yes, but duty carried with courage, and courage deserves recognition." A murmur spread through the hall. Then the Chancellor lifted a hand. From the side of the chamber, a small group entered, carrying something unusual. It was not treasure, nor weapons, nor medals. It was a tiny figure walking with graceful steps upon a golden platform. Elias blinked. At first he thought it was a child, but no, it was a fully grown woman, no taller than his hand. Her hair shimmered like strands of blue silk, and her eyes glowed with soft violet light. She wore a delicate dress that seemed woven from starlight itself. She held her head high, though her size made her seem fragile in the vast hall. The Chancellor spoke again. "This is Lyra of the Scifi. Her people are small in form, but ancient in wisdom. Long ago, the Scifi pledged service as tokens of gratitude to those who protected their hidden worlds. Captain Ward, the Council offers her to you, not as a possession, but as a companion and reward." Elias froze. A reward? A living person? His soldier's heart tightened. He was used to medals, perhaps a new ship, maybe even a plot of land. But this? He did not know what to say. Lyra, however, stepped forward on the golden platform. Her voice, though soft, carried clearly through the chamber. "Captain Ward," she said, "it is my honor to stand before you. I choose this path, willingly. Among my people, it is not shame but pride to serve one who has shown great courage. Will you accept me?" The hall grew silent. Dozens of alien eyes waited for his answer. Elias looked at Lyra. She was so small, yet her gaze was steady, stronger than he expected. He realized she was not afraid. She was offering herself with dignity, as if this was something sacred to her culture. Still, Elias hesitated. I don't think I should accept a person as a reward," he said carefully. "You are not a medal, nor a prize. You are someone with your own life." Lyra smiled faintly, a soft curve of her lips. "And I choose to share that life with you. If you do not wish it, I will return to my people. But my heart tells me this is my path." The Chancellor spoke again. "Captain, understand this gift. To decline is not dishonor. To accept is to bind yourself in trust with her people. The choice is yours." Elias took a deep breath. His mind raced. 1,000 eyes were on him. But at that moment he thought, not of the council, nor the ceremony, nor the whispers of other species. He thought only of the small woman looking up at him with courage far greater than her size. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. If it is truly your choice, then I accept." The hall erupted in soft tones of approval. The Chancellor raised his arms. "So it is done. May the bond between human and Scifi grow strong." Lyra bowed low, then stepped closer. With careful movement, she sat on Elias's palm as light as a feather. For the first time, Elias truly saw her up close. Her features were fine and delicate, yet her eyes held the weight of years beyond his understanding. She was no child, no toy, but a being of wisdom and pride. The ceremony ended, and Elias soon found himself walking back toward his ship. The grand hall faded behind him, replaced by the familiar steel corridors of the docking bay. His boots echoed on the floor, and in his hand, Lyra sat calmly, looking around with curiosity. "You're really not afraid, are you?" Elias asked, quietly. Lyra tilted her head. "Why should I be? You are known for bravery and kindness. My people would not send me to one unworthy." He gave a short laugh. "Kindness? Most of the time I just try not to make mistakes." "That is what kindness often is," Lyra said simply. "Choosing not to harm when you have the power to do so." Elias fell silent at that. The words stayed with him as he reached the boarding ramp of his ship, the Resolute. The crew saluted him, curious glances flickering toward the tiny figure on his shoulder. "This is Lyra," Elias told them. "She'll be with us from now on. Treat her with the same respect you give me." The crew nodded, though some still looked puzzled. They had seen many strange things in space, but a tiny alien woman as the captain's companion was new even for them. Later, inside his private cabin, Elias set Lyra down on the desk. She walked across the surface with ease, examining data pads, tools, and a mug of coffee larger than her whole body. She touched the mug and smiled. "So heavy, yet you lift it with one hand." Elias leaned back in his chair. "I still don't know if this is right," he admitted. "Having you here feels unusual." Lyra looked up at him. "Unusual things often lead to new paths. You saved many worlds, Captain. Now perhaps you will learn from one much smaller than yourself." Her words struck him again. Elias realized she was not here to serve like a servant, nor to be displayed like a prize. She was here to share something: wisdom, perspective, perhaps even friendship. He didn't yet know what form it would take, but he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. He nodded slowly. "Then let us see where this path leads." Lyra gave a bright smile, her tiny face glowing with joy. "Yes, Captain. Together." That night, as the Resolute prepared to depart from the council station, Elias stood by the viewport. Stars stretched endlessly before him, a sea of light and darkness. On his shoulder, Lyra stood as well, gazing out at the cosmos. She seemed so small against the infinite sky, yet Elias felt her presence was larger than it seemed. For the first time in many years, the soldier did not feel alone in the vastness of space, and so began the journey of Captain Elias Ward and Lyra of the Scifi, a bond born not of duty alone, but of choice, trust, and the promise of new adventures. Life on the Resolute quickly changed after Lyra joined the crew. At first, the soldiers and officers were unsure how to behave around her. She was no taller than a man's hand, yet she walked with such dignity that even the tallest officers felt the need to bow their heads slightly when she passed. Elias tried to keep everything as normal as possible, but nothing about Lyra was normal. Adjusting to human spaces, the first challenge came with the living spaces. Elias's cabin was designed for a full-grown man, not for a woman the size of a cup. The first night, Lyra had tried to sleep on the desk, curling up near the data pads like a small bird. Elias had woken to find her wrapped in a folded cloth, fast asleep beside his mug of coffee. "This won't do," Elias muttered. So he asked the engineering crew to build something special, a small raised platform beside his desk, with miniature steps leading up. It had tiny furniture carved from spare metal and fabric. The engineers at first thought it a joke, but when they saw Lyra's bright smile as she stepped onto her own little home, they felt pride in their work. "This is perfect," Lyra said softly. "It feels like my own space, yet close enough to speak with you." Elias nodded, though inside he still felt strange. A human soldier having a miniature alien as a companion was unlike anything he had ever imagined. learning from each other as days passed. Lyra explored the ship. She often walked along the long tables in the mess hall, where crew members placed cups and plates that seemed like mountains to her. She would sit on the edge, swinging her legs while asking endless questions. "Why do humans eat so quickly?" she asked one day, watching the crew devour their meals. "Because we're always short on time," one officer answered with a laugh. "Or perhaps," Lyra said thoughtfully, "because you fear slowing down. My people eat slowly, sometimes, for hours, because we believe each bite carries memory. To rush is to forget." The crew grew quiet at her words. Elias noticed how even hardened soldiers leaned closer when Lyra spoke. She had a way of turning simple thoughts into lessons. In return, Lyra was fascinated by human habits. She tried to lift a spoon once, struggling to hold the heavy handle with both arms. Elias gently took it from her fingers. "You'll hurt yourself," he said, but Lyra only laughed. "To me, your smallest tools are great weapons or machines. It shows how powerful your kind must seem to others." Elias frowned slightly. "Sometimes too powerful. That's why many aliens don't trust us." Lyra touched his finger with her tiny hand as if calming him. "Power is only frightening when it is careless. You do not strike carelessly, Captain. That is why I follow you." Her words warmed him more than he expected. A new mission weeks later, a message arrived from the Interstellar Council. The Resolute was ordered to travel to a frontier world called Vera 4. There, two alien groups were locked in an argument over territory. The Council wanted Elias to observe and prevent the situation from becoming worse. Elias sighed when he read the orders. "Politics," he muttered. "I'd rather face a storm in deep space than sit between arguing leaders." Lyra, sitting on his desk, tilted her head. "And yet, sometimes words are storms too. You may need to guide them." "You sound too confident in me," Elias said with a small smile. "Confidence grows when shared," Lyra replied. "I will help you." He looked at her carefully. This could be dangerous. The arguments between species sometimes turn ugly. Lyra did not flinch. "My size lets me move where others cannot. My ears hear things you may miss. Do not think of me as weak, Captain. Think of me as a different kind of strong." Elias nodded slowly. He was beginning to believe her. The journey to Vera 4. The Resolute slipped into hyperspace, stars stretching into long streams outside the viewport. Inside, the crew prepared for diplomatic duty. Documents were checked, translators tuned, supplies stocked. Lyra often stood on Elias's shoulder watching the crew bustle about. "Humans always prepare with such energy," she observed. "You act as if you can control every detail." Elias chuckled. "That's because we like to feel ready. Even if we're not," Lyra smiled. "That is what makes your people so different. Other species wait for certainty before moving. Humans move even when uncertain. It is both reckless and brave." Elias thought about her words during the long voyage. She had only been aboard for a short time, yet she already saw things about humanity that he himself rarely noticed. On the planet's surface, when the Resolute arrived at Vera 4, Elias and a small team went down to the surface. Lyra rode in a special pocket of his uniform, peeking out like a curious bird. The planet was lush with green forests and tall, glass-like trees that shone in the sunlight. Yet the atmosphere was tense. Two camps of aliens stood apart, glaring at each other. One group, tall and covered in scales, hissed in their language. The other, shorter but broad and strong, stamped their feet in frustration. Translators struggled to keep up with the angry words. Elias stepped forward, his voice calm. "I am here to listen, not to command. Let us talk before anger blinds us," the scaled leader sneered. "Humans think their tall frames give them authority." Before Elias could reply, Lyra climbed onto his shoulder, visible to both sides. The aliens blinked in surprise. "What is this?" one of them asked. Lyra's small voice carried, gentle but firm. "Not all strength is size. Not all wisdom is height. Judge not by the body, but by the choices made. Both groups fell silent. Her presence confused them, but also softened their anger. The sight of a tiny being standing with the human soldier reminded them that alliances could exist between the great and the small. Elias glanced at her with respect. She had spoken only a few words, yet they had done more than his careful sentences. Back, on the ship that evening, back aboard the Resolute, Elias leaned on his desk, exhausted. Lyra sat cross-legged on her platform, sipping a drop of water from a tiny cup made by the engineers. "You were braver than me today," Elias admitted. Lyra shook her head. "I was only myself. It is you who gave me the chance to speak." Elias smiled faintly. "Maybe this mission will be easier with you around." "Or maybe harder," Lyra teased, her violet eyes shining. "But either way, we will not be bored." Elias laughed quietly, the sound echoing in the cabin. For the first time in many years, he felt a strange lightness in his heart. Lyra might be small, but her presence filled spaces that medals and honors never could. She was no longer just a reward. She was becoming a partner. And as the ship sailed on toward new challenges, Elias began to wonder if perhaps the tiny Scifi woman had more to teach him than he could ever teach her. That night, as the ship drifted through the stars, Elias sat by the viewport. Lyra perched on his shoulder, both of them staring at the endless dark. Two worlds, one large, one small, now shared the same path. And though neither knew what awaited them on Vera 4, both felt the same quiet certainty. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The Resolute remained in orbit above Vera 4, a world beautiful in its forests but heavy with tension. From the observation deck, Captain Elias Ward studied the planet below. Two alien groups, the Verans, tall and scaled, and the Dren, shorter and broad, continued to argue over land and resources. The Interstellar Council feared a split in the alliance if the quarrel grew worse. Elias rubbed his forehead. Diplomacy was never his strongest skill. He had trained for battles, rescues, and patrols, not for sitting between two furious alien leaders. Yet here he was. On his desk, Lyra sat cross-legged, her violet eyes thoughtful. "You look tired, Captain." Elias gave a small smile. I'm tired. Talking feels harder than fighting sometimes." Lyra tilted her head. "That is because talking requires more than strength. It requires patience. Do you wish me to help you tomorrow?" Elias raised an eyebrow. "You already helped me once with just a few words. The two sides calmed when they saw you on my shoulder. But this time the problem is deeper. They won't stop just because you remind them that small things matter." Lyra stood up, tiny hands on her hips. "Then perhaps it is time I do more than just speak." The gathering of leaders. The next day, the leaders of the Verans and Dreni met in a temporary council hall built from shining crystal panels. Elias entered with two officers at his side. Lyra, as always, was with him, hidden in the pocket of his uniform until the right moment. The Veran leader hissed. "These humans think they can order us to share what is ours." The Dren chief stamped the floor. "You claim the land, but it was ours before you arrived." Their voices rose, anger filling the air. Translators worked quickly, but their words carried more emotion than meaning. Elias raised his hands. "Enough. Shouting won't solve this." But neither side listened. The hall grew louder. That was when Lyra climbed out of Elias's pocket and stood on his shoulder, her small figure visible to all. "Silence," she said softly. The room grew quiet. The voice of a Scifi was not loud, yet it carried weight, like the gentle sound of rain that makes everyone listen. "You argue because you see only what is large," Lyra continued. "You see land, you see numbers, you see borders, but you do not see what is hidden." The leaders frowned. "Hidden?" Lyra nodded. "Yes. Give me leave, and I will show you." The secret beneath the ground. That evening, Elias followed Lyra's directions into the forest with a small team. She rode in his palm, guiding them toward a cluster of glass-like trees that shimmered under the twin moons. "Here," she whispered. The soldiers scanned the area but saw nothing unusual, just soil roots and stone. Elias crouched. "What are we supposed to find?" Lyra leapt from his palm and landed lightly on the ground. For a moment she disappeared into the grass, almost invisible. Then her voice called, "Here, look closer." Elias knelt, brushing aside the soil where she pointed. To his surprise, faint lines appeared, strange markings carved into stone beneath the surface. One officer gasped. "These aren't natural." "No," Lyra said, running her tiny hands over the grooves. "These are ancient records. My people read signs like these. Long ago another race lived here. They planted the glass trees, built homes, and then vanished. This land belongs not to the Varens or the Dren. It belongs to history." Elias felt his chest tighten. If that's true, then both sides are fighting over something that never belonged to them in the first place. Lyra looked up at him, her eyes glowing in the moonlight. "Exactly. But they cannot see it because they are too tall to look." "Down." Elias chuckled softly despite the seriousness. "And you could see it because you are close to the ground." Lyra smiled. Small eyes notice what large eyes miss. The evidence shared, the next morning the leaders gathered again. Elias stood before them, holding a crystal slate where the carvings had been recorded. Lyra stood on the table, pointing to the images. "These are the marks we found beneath the soil," she explained. "They prove another people lived here long before either of you. The land carries their memory. To fight over it is to dishonor what came before." The hall grew silent. The Varen leader frowned deeply, his scaled face unreadable. The Dren chief crossed his arms. "This is true?" one asked. Lyra nodded. "My people have studied the hidden signs of the galaxy for ages. I can read what others cannot. This is truth." The aliens muttered among themselves. For the first time, their anger was mixed with doubt. Elias spoke firmly. "You see now? This land is not just yours or theirs. It carries a past greater than both. You can either fight until you both lose everything, or you can share, honor what was, and build something new together." The room remained tense, but Elias noticed a shift. Neither side stormed out, neither side shouted. They were thinking. Respect for the tiny voice that night back in the cabin of the Resolute, Elias sat quietly while Lyra rested on her small platform. "You've done more in 2 days than I could have done in 2 weeks, he admitted. "How? Did you even know where to look?" Lyra smiled faintly. "The glass trees. They were not natural to this world. I noticed it when we first landed. My people have seen such trees before. I only followed the memory of their roots." Elias shook his head in wonder. "And I thought you were just curious. Turns out you were reading the land like a book." Lyra laughed softly. "Curiosity is the first page of every book." He leaned back, thoughtful. "You know, at first, I thought of you as fragile, but you're tougher than half the soldiers I've served with." Her violet eyes softened. "Strength takes many forms, Captain. You carry strength in your arms and voice. I carry it in my eyes and memory. Together, we make a whole." Elias found himself smiling more than he had in years. "I think the council didn't give me a reward, Lyra. They gave me a teacher." Lyra shook her head gently. "No, Elias, they gave you a partner." The crisis grows the next day. News came that some younger warriors from both sides were refusing to wait for decisions. They were preparing to march into the forest to claim the land by force. Elias cursed under his breath. So much for reason. Lyra placed her tiny hand on his wrist. "Do not despair. We now hold the truth of the land. That truth can still guide them, if we act quickly." Elias stood, determination returning to his eyes. "Then let's act." And so the human soldier and the tiny alien woman prepared once more to face the storm of anger, not with weapons, but with the hidden strength of small things. Truth, patience, and the bond that had begun to grow between them. That night, as stars shone over Vera 4, Elias looked out the viewport once more. Lyra stood beside him on the ledge, her silhouette outlined by the light of distant suns. She was small, yes, but her presence filled the cabin like a beacon. Elias realized that what many saw as fragile was in fact unbreakable, and he knew in his heart that together, they were just beginning to show the galaxy what humans and their smallest allies could truly achieve. The tension on Vera 4 had reached a delicate point. While Elias and Lyra had uncovered the hidden history beneath the forests, some younger warriors from both the Veyran and Dren groups still refused to wait for reason. Rumors of skirmishes swirled through the forest, and the Interstellar Council urged quick resolution. Elias sat in the command room of the Resolute, staring at a holographic map of the contested land. Red and blue markers blinked in uneasy patterns. "I thought we had calmed things," he muttered. Lyra perched on the edge of the desk, her tiny hands folded neatly in front of her. "Calm is only as strong as those who hold it," she said. "We have knowledge, Captain, but we must show strength in action as well." Elias leaned back. "You mean diplomacy again? I'm tired of talking." Lyra shook her head. "Not just talking. Showing them that even humans whom many see as young and reckless can protect truth, respect history, and guide others without force. That is your strength, hidden but real." Elias looked at her quietly. She was right. Too often, humans relied on brute strength to prove themselves. Yet it was creativity, courage, and persistence that often turned the tide of conflicts. He realized that Lyra had already shown him that power was more than muscles or weapons, a dangerous path. The next morning, Elias led a small delegation down to the forest, with Lyra in his palm. The warriors from both sides were gathering near the central glass tree grove. Their eyes were sharp, hands twitching toward weapons, anger simmering. Elias raised his hand. "Stand down," he called. "We are not here to fight. We are here to show you a way forward." Some laughed. Others scoffed. Only a few lowered their arms. Lyra climbed onto his shoulder, raising her tiny hand so that everyone could see her. Her voice was soft but unwavering. "Look at me," she said. "I am small, yet I speak truth. You are large, yet you cannot see what is beneath your feet. Will you continue to fight blindly, or will you choose wisdom?" A silence fell over the grove. Some of the younger warriors blinked. It was hard to argue with someone so small who clearly carried authority. Even beyond her size, Elias stepped forward. "We found evidence that this land belongs to no one now. It carries the memory of those who came before. To fight over it is to disrespect them and to risk your own lives." Uniting perspectives. For hours, Elias and Lyra guided the alien, leaders and warriors through the grove. Lyra pointed out ancient carvings on stones, the roots of the glass trees, and patterns in the soil that told stories of an extinct species. Her explanations were precise, her voice gentle but firm. Elias watched closely. He realized that Lyra's small size allowed her to get close to things others might overlook. She moved through the roots, climbed small branches, and demonstrated points of evidence with ease. Where a human might have missed subtle details, Lyra highlighted every nuance. The warriors from both sides began to lean in. They listened, they examined, and slowly, the anger in their eyes softened. "You see," Lyra whispered to Elias, "truth can be stronger than force." Elias nodded. "And you've just proved that size matters little when courage and knowledge guide action." Lyra smiled faintly. "Humans already know that. It's why I follow you." The young warrior's challenge, just as calm, seemed to settle. A group of young warriors, impatient and still full of pride, stepped forward. They raised their weapons and shouted, ready to act before the elders could decide. Elias felt his stomach tighten. One wrong move and all the progress could vanish. Lyra stood, taller though still tiny. "Stop!" she commanded. Do you wish to shame yourselves? Do you wish to fight and lose what you cannot reclaim? The young warriors laughed at first. They could barely see her as a threat. But then she began to move quickly through the crowd, jumping from shoulder to shoulder, tapping on helmets, pointing to carvings, and speaking in short, sharp phrases that made them pause. Look, the past watches, she said. The truth is here, Elias added his voice. They are right. Do not fight blindly. See what is here. Choose honor over anger. The soldiers hesitated. They looked at the carvings, the soil, and the delicate roots around their feet. Slowly they lowered their weapons, realizing that their actions would have consequences far greater than their own pride. Lyra had done what Elias alone could not. She had made the young warriors see that strength was not measured in height or muscle, but in understanding and respect. Building the alliance by evening, a truce had formed. The Varen and Dren leaders spoke quietly with Elias and Lyra, arranging boundaries and agreements based on the ancient history of the land, rather than their personal desires. Elias watched as Lyra moved effortlessly between the groups, mediating, answering questions, and encouraging compromise. She reminded him again that even the smallest beings could influence the largest outcomes. You were right, Captain, she said, when they returned to the Resolute. Humans have unseen strength, not just in battle, but in the ability to persist, to reason, and to inspire. Elias smiled. And you've reminded me that we don't always need weapons to make a difference. Sometimes we just need patience, and a little help from those who see what we cannot. Lyra's eyes twinkled. Then perhaps our journey together will show the galaxy more than either of us imagined. A lesson learned. The next days were quieter. Patrols continued, and Elias held meetings with both alien groups to ensure the agreements were honored. Lyra stayed by his side, offering advice and guidance. Crew members began to treat her not as a curiosity, but as a valued member of the team. Elias reflected on how much had changed in so short a time. He had thought that a reward in the form of a tiny alien woman would be strange, perhaps even inconvenient. But Lyra had shown him that value is not measured in size, appearance, or strength alone. It is measured in insight, courage, and the ability to inspire others. That evening, Elias and Lyra stood on the observation deck, looking out at the glowing forests of Vera 4. You've done more than I expected, Elias said softly. I think the Council gave me you not as a reward, but as a reminder that humans can achieve more than they seem to. Lyra rested on his shoulder. And I think they gave me you to learn something too, that even the largest beings sometimes need small voices to guide them. Elias smiled, feeling a rare warmth in his heart. I suppose that makes us quite the pair. Lyra laughed softly. Yes, small and large, thoughtful and strong, different in form, united in purpose. Elias nodded. And together we might just change the galaxy, one small step at a time. A quiet victory as the stars shimmered beyond the viewport. Elias and Lyra shared a moment of quiet reflection. The Varen and Dren groups were still cautious, but for the first time in months, hope had replaced fear. The fragile alliance was now stronger because a human soldier had chosen to listen, and a tiny Scifi woman had shown that even the smallest presence could carry enormous influence. Elias realized that heroism did not always come in grand battles. Sometimes it came in quiet actions, clever words, and unwavering patience, and often it came from unexpected sources. Lyra looked at him with her violet eyes. Do you feel it, Captain? The bond we share now is stronger than any weapon or fleet. It is trust, respect, and understanding. That is what humans and Scifi alike can build. Elias placed his hand gently over hers. I feel it, and I think the galaxy will notice soon enough. Lyra smiled. Then let us prepare for what comes next. We have more to teach, more to learn, and more to protect. The Resolute drifted, silently in orbit, carrying its human captain and his tiny companion forward. Together they had faced anger, impatience, and pride, and emerged with something stronger than victory. A shared understanding that strength often hides in the smallest, most unexpected places. The sun rose over Vera 4, painting the forest in soft gold. From orbit, the Resolute caught the light, reflecting it like a floating jewel among the clouds. Inside the ship, Captain Elias Ward stood at the observation deck, his eyes scanning the lush land below. The conflicts of the past days seemed smaller now, shadows softened by understanding and patience. Lyra perched on his shoulder, her violet eyes reflecting the sunrise. "It is quiet," she said, her voice soft but steady. "For now, all is as it should be." Elias nodded. "The leaders have agreed to honor the boundaries, and the young warriors are learning patience. I think the alliance will hold." Lyra smiled faintly. "You humans have a way of inspiring others, Captain. Even when others doubt, your determination shows a path forward." Elias shook his head. "I didn't do it alone. I had you with me. I think we did this together." Lyra's small hand touched his arm gently. "Partnership is always stronger than solitude. You learn to see the strength in patience, and I learn to trust the courage of humans." Recognition. Across the galaxy, news of the success on Vera 4 spread quickly through the Interstellar Council. Reports spoke not only of Elias's leadership, but also of the unique contribution of Lyra of the Scifi. Many council members were intrigued that a being so small and young in experience could influence decisions of larger and older species. High Chancellor Serial requested a private message to Elias. It read, "Captain Ward, your actions have demonstrated the value of humanity to all the galaxy, not only for your courage, but for your ability to listen, learn, and work with others, and to Lyra of the Scifi, whose wisdom proves that strength is not measured by size. Your partnership is a model for all species." Elias read the message, aloud to Lyra. She looked up, her small face glowing with pride. "We were expected to act, not to be remembered," she said quietly. "But I am pleased the Council sees what we have done." Elias grinned. "I think this is only the beginning. If the galaxy notices us here, imagine what we can do next." Lyra laughed softly. "Next? Captain, the stars are endless. We have many lessons to share and many places to explore." Learning and teaching back aboard the Resolute, life returned to its rhythm. The crew had grown accustomed to Lyra's presence. They no longer looked at her as a curiosity, but as an advisor, a partner, and sometimes even a friend. She helped officers understand subtle details in alien customs, advised Elias during strategy sessions, and even shared small stories of her people's history and wisdom. Elias watched her one afternoon, perched on the edge of a control panel, reading star charts with tiny hands. "You really love learning, don't you?" he asked. Lyra looked up, her eyes bright. "Knowledge is like the stars, Captain, endless and full of light. Every new thing we discover can guide us, and perhaps guide others." Elias smiled. He realized that Lyra's presence had changed more than his missions. She had changed him. He now saw value not only in courage and strength, but also in patience, observation, and understanding. And he saw that the smallest beings often carried wisdom that even the largest could not reach. A growing bond as the weeks passed. Elias and Lyra spent more time together. They trained, explored, and discussed everything from human history to Scifi philosophy. One evening, the stars stretched endlessly outside the viewport. Lyra stood on the edge of the railing, looking down at the forest below. "You seem at home here," Elias said. Lyra turned, smiling. "Home is not a place, Captain. It is where trust and respect are shared. And here I am at home." Elias felt warmth in his chest. "I used to think a companion would be awkward, but you are far more than that. You are a partner, a teacher, and a friend. I don't know what I would have done without you." Lyra stepped closer. "And I would not be here without your choice to accept me. Together we make each other stronger." Elias nodded. "Then we continue, together, wherever the galaxy takes us." An invitation. Several weeks later, the Council sent an invitation. They requested that Elias and Lyra represent humanity and the Scifi at an intergalactic summit. It would be a gathering of leaders from countless worlds, a chance to discuss trade, peace, and exploration. Elias glanced at Lyra. "Do you think we're ready for something like that?" Lyra's tiny hand rested on his finger. "We are. You have shown patience, courage, and wisdom. I have shown perspective. The galaxy will learn from both." Elias smiled, feeling a mixture of pride and excitement. "Then let's go. Together." And so the Resolute set course for the Council's central station. Inside, Elias and Lyra reviewed documents, prepared speeches, and practiced their presentations. They worked as a team, each complementing the other. The Council's recognition had given them honor, but it was their partnership that gave them strength. The summit. When they arrived, leaders of countless species filled the grand hall. Some were skeptical of humans. Some were amused by the tiny Scifi woman standing on Elias's shoulder. But when Lyra began to speak, the room quieted. Her words were simple, yet full of insight. "We cannot always see what is small, or what is hidden. Yet even the smallest actions and the smallest beings can change the course of worlds." Elias followed her voice with his own. "Humanity may be young in galactic terms, but we carry courage, creativity, and determination. And when we work with others, large or small, we can solve problems that seem impossible." By the end of their presentations, the room buzzed with admiration. Leaders discussed not only the mission on Vera 4, but also the partnership between a human soldier and a tiny Scifi woman. The example was inspiring, a story that would be shared across systems for years to come. Lyra turned to Elias quietly. "Do you see? Even the galaxy can learn from our bond." Elias nodded. "And I see that the reward was never meant for me alone. It was meant for both of us, and perhaps for everyone who watches what we do next." New horizons. After the summit, Elias and Lyra returned to the Resolute. The galaxy seemed larger than ever, full of mysteries, dangers, and wonders, yet they faced it with confidence. Lyra often stood on his shoulder as they plotted courses to new systems, pointing out hidden details in stars and planets. Elias listened, learning from her insights. They celebrated small discoveries and planned for future missions where their unique partnership could help others. Sometimes crew members would ask Elias why he allowed such a tiny companion to be part of the ship. His answer was always the same. "Strength comes in many forms, and sometimes the smallest voice can teach the loudest lesson." Lyra would smile at that, tiny hand resting on his arm, knowing that she had found not just a commander, but a true partner. A promise for the future. One night, while the ship drifted near a nebula that glowed like liquid colors, Elias and Lyra stood side by side at the observation deck. "Do you think the galaxy will ever understand humans?" Lyra asked softly. Elias glanced at her. "Some will, others may never see it. But it doesn't matter. We know our own strength, and we know the difference we can make together." Lyra nodded. "Then we continue, Captain. Wherever we go, we show that courage, wisdom, and trust are more powerful than size or fear." Elias placed a hand gently over hers. "Together, Lyra. Always together." They watched the swirling colors of the nebula, feeling the vastness of space and the endless possibilities ahead. They had faced tension, uncertainty, and doubt, and emerged stronger not because of power alone, but because of their bond, their respect for each other, and the courage to act wisely. And so, Captain Elias Ward and Lyra of the Scifi set course for new adventures, carrying with them a message that would ripple across the galaxy. Strength is not measured by size, but by heart, wisdom, and the bonds we choose. The stars stretched endlessly before them. Two worlds, one large, one small, traveled, together as partners ready to face the infinite future with hope, courage, and trust.